Rain hammered the street outside the downtown bar. Marcus Reed, 32, security guard and single father, stood in the doorway, watching his boss stumble toward the curb. Claire Bennett, CEO of Bennett Industries, 30 years old, could barely stand. Her so-called friends had left her alone, drunk and vulnerable. Marcus caught her arm before she fell. "Ms. Bennett, let me get you home safely." She looked up at him, eyes unfocused. "You actually care?" He helped her into his old sedan. "Someone has to." The next morning, his phone buzzed with a message that would change everything. "Before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching this from. I'd really love to know that." Now let's start. Marcus Reed had learned to survive on three principles: work hard, stay invisible, and never get involved in other people's problems. At 32, he worked the night shift as a security guard at Bennett Industries, one of the city's most prestigious tech companies. The pay was decent. The hours allowed him to be present for his daughter Lily during the day, and most importantly, nobody bothered him. He clocked in, made his rounds, and clocked out. Simple, predictable, safe. Lily was 6 years old, bright as summer sunshine, with her mother's quick smile and curious nature. Sarah had been gone for 3 years now, taken by a drunk driver who ran a red light and destroyed Marcus's entire world in a single moment. The settlement money had helped with immediate expenses, but it sat untouched in an account Marcus couldn't bring himself to spend, as though using it would mean accepting that his wife was really gone. Working security meant Marcus existed in the background of other people's lives. He saw the executives arrive early and leave late, watched the junior staff hustle for recognition, observed the office politics and power games from a distance that suited him perfectly. Claire Bennett, the CEO, was someone he saw occasionally, always moving with purpose, always surrounded by assistants and advisors, always untouchable in ways that money and power created. The company holiday party happened at an upscale bar downtown, the kind of place where a single drink cost more than Marcus made in an hour. He wasn't invited, of course. Security staff weren't part of the celebration, but his shift ended at 11 and the bar was on his route home, so he noticed the crowd spilling onto the sidewalk, loud with alcohol and the temporary equality that company parties created before everyone returned to their proper positions the next morning. He almost didn't stop, almost kept driving toward the small apartment where Mrs. Park from next door was watching Lily, where his daughter was probably already asleep with her favorite stuffed rabbit clutched tight. But something made him glance toward the bar entrance one more time, and that's when he saw her. Claire Bennett stood alone near the curb, swaying slightly, her elegant dress and expensive heels completely at odds with how vulnerable she looked. Her phone was in her hand, but she seemed unable to focus on the screen. And as Marcus watched, a group of men approached her with the kind of predatory interest that made his protective instincts flare, despite his policy of staying uninvolved. Marcus parked his car illegally and crossed the street before conscious thought could stop him. The rain had started, cold autumn downpour that sent most people running for cover, but Claire just stood there getting soaked, her perfect CEO composure completely dissolved by whatever she'd been drinking. "Ms. Bennett," Marcus said, positioning himself between her and the approaching men who suddenly decided they had somewhere else to be when they saw his security guard uniform and his expression. "Let me get you home safely." She looked up at him with eyes that struggled to focus, mascara running slightly from the rain. "Marcus? The night guard?" Her words slurred just enough to confirm she was far beyond tipsy. "You actually care what happens to me?" "Someone has to," Marcus replied, already guiding her toward his car with gentle but firm pressure on her elbow. "Where are your friends? The people you came with?" Claire laughed, a bitter sound that didn't match her usual polished presentation. "Friends? Those were colleagues, business relationships. They left when I became inconvenient and embarrassing instead of powerful and useful." Marcus helped her into his passenger seat, the interior of his old sedan, a stark contrast to whatever luxury vehicle she normally occupied. He fastened her seatbelt like he did for Lily, ignoring how strange it felt to be this close to someone who existed in a completely different world than his own. "Where do you live, Ma?" he asked, starting the engine. Claire rattled off an address in the city's most expensive district, then slumped against the window. "Why are you helping me, Marcus? You're the security guard. The invisible man who walks the halls at night. You could have just kept driving. Because it's the right thing to do, Marcus said simply, and because I'd want someone to do the same for Lily someday if she needed help. Lily, Claire repeated softly, your daughter. I've seen her picture on your security desk. She looks like sunshine. The drive took 20 minutes through rain-slick streets, Claire drifting in and out of coherence, sometimes asking random questions about his life, sometimes just staring out the window at the city passing by. When they reached her building, the doorman's expression made clear he'd never seen his wealthy resident arrive in such a vehicle or such a state. Marcus helped Claire to her penthouse, ignored the doorman's judgment, and made sure she was safely inside before leaving. He didn't take advantage, didn't snoop, didn't do anything except ensure she was secure in her own home. Then he drove back to his own neighborhood, back to his own life, assuming this would be a strange story he'd remember, but never mention. The next morning his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number that made his heart stop. Marcus woke to Lily jumping on his bed, her usual morning enthusiasm undimmed by the fact that he'd only gotten 4 hours of sleep after his shift and the unexpected detour with his boss. Daddy, wake up! Mrs. Park made pancakes and she says I can have chocolate chips if you say it's okay. He pulled her into a hug, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. Just this once, sunshine. But you have to eat real food at lunch. Deal? Deal! Lily raced back toward the kitchen, leaving Marcus to drag himself out of bed and face another day. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. Probably spam. He almost ignored it, but something made him check. The message was brief, professional, and completely unexpected. Marcus, this is Claire Bennett. I need to see you. My office, 10 a.m. Please don't refuse. CB Marcus stared at the screen, his mind racing through possibilities. Was he getting fired for overstepping boundaries? Was this some kind of harassment accusation for helping her home? Had she been so drunk she didn't remember and thought something inappropriate had happened? He called Mrs. Park, arranged extended childcare, and spent the next 2 hours alternating between anxiety and the strange calm that came from knowing you had no control over what was about to happen. At 9:45, he presented himself at Bennett Industries' main reception, feeling completely out of place in his best jeans and the button-down shirt he wore to parent-teacher conferences. Claire's assistant, a efficient woman named Jennifer, who had never acknowledged Marcus's existence before, looked at him with something approaching curiosity. Mr. Reed, Ms. Bennett is expecting you. Go right in. The corner office was everything Marcus expected from a CEO's space. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than his car, art that he assumed was important because it looked expensive. Claire stood by the windows, wearing a crisp business suit that bore no resemblance to the vulnerable woman he'd helped the night before. Marcus, she said, turning to face him, thank you for coming. Please sit down. He remained standing, uncomfortable with the power imbalance and the strangeness of being in this space. Ms. Bennett, if this is about last night, I promise I was just trying to help. Nothing inappropriate happened. I just made sure you got home safely. I know, Claire interrupted gently. I remember everything. That's why I needed to see you. She moved to her desk, picked up a folder, and handed it to him. This is a job offer, head of corporate security. Salary is 3 times what you make now, full benefits, regular hours that would let you be present for your daughter during evenings and weekends. Office on the executive floor, team of 5 reporting to you, authority to implement whatever protocols you think are necessary to keep this company and its people safe. Marcus opened the folder, saw numbers that didn't seem real, benefits that included things like college savings plans and family health care. I don't understand. Why would you offer me this? Because last night I learned something important about who I can trust, Claire said, leaning against her desk. Do you know what happened after you left me at my apartment? Marcus shook his head. I received 17 text messages from colleagues who were at that party. Not one asked if I was okay or if I needed help. They were all asking what I'd said while drunk, whether I'd embarrassed the company, whether I'd revealed anything confidential that might affect their positions. 17 people who see me every day, who smile and agree in meetings, who pretend to care about my leadership vision. Not one actually cared about me as a person. She pushed away from the desk, moving to stand directly in front of him. But you stopped. You, the night security guard who has every reason to stay invisible and uninvolved, who was off the clock and heading home to your daughter, you stopped. You helped me when helping me gave you no advantage, no benefit, nothing except doing the right thing because it needed to be done. Anyone would have done the same, Marcus said quietly. That's where you're wrong, Claire replied. 17 colleagues proved that last night. My so-called friends left me alone and vulnerable because being associated with me in that state might hurt their social standing. You helped me because it was right, and then you left without taking advantage, without asking for anything, without even expecting thanks. She returned to her chair, gesturing for Marcus to finally sit. I need people around me who I can trust, people whose loyalty isn't based on what they can get from me, but on genuine integrity. I've spent 3 years as CEO learning that wealth and power attract a very specific type of person, and it's rarely the type you actually want in your life when things get difficult. I'm not qualified for this position, Marcus said, looking at the job description. I've been doing basic security rounds. This role requires management experience, strategic planning, relationships with law enforcement and corporate security firms. I'd be completely out of my depth. You're more qualified than you think, Claire countered. I did some research this morning. You were a Marine, 3 tours overseas, decorated for your service. You worked in executive protection after you came home for some very high-profile clients until your wife passed and you needed something more stable that allowed you to be present for your daughter. You took a massive step down in position and pay because your daughter mattered more than your career. That's exactly the kind of person I need in this role. Marcus felt exposed in ways he hadn't since Sarah's funeral, when people had looked at him with pity he couldn't escape. How did you find all that? I have resources, Claire said simply, and I use them when I need to make important decisions. This is an important decision, Marcus. I'm offering you this position not out of gratitude or guilt about last night, but because I genuinely believe you're the right person for this role. You have integrity, judgment, protective instincts, and most importantly, you can't be bought or manipulated by office politics. She leaned forward, her expression serious. I need someone who will tell me the truth even when it's uncomfortable. Someone who will prioritize actual security over appearances. Someone who understands that protecting people is more important than protecting reputations. That's you. Marcus looked at the folder again, saw the numbers that would mean Lily could have dance lessons she'd been asking about, could mean they could move to a neighborhood with better schools, could mean he wouldn't have to work night shifts and survive on 4 hours of sleep while trying to be present parent during the day. But more than the money, something else caught his attention. A clause in the contract about flexible scheduling for single parents, about on-site childcare facilities, about family emergency leave that didn't come out of vacation time. Someone had thought about his specific situation and tried to address the challenges he faced. Did you write these provisions? Marcus asked, pointing to the family-friendly policies. Claire nodded. I spent all night thinking about what you said, about wanting someone to help Lily if she ever needed it, about how you're doing everything alone while trying to be enough for a 6-year-old who deserves the world. These provisions should have been in our employee handbook already. They will be now, for everyone, but especially for you if you accept this position. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, and the careful walls he'd built around himself since Sarah died developing small cracks that let in possibility he'd stopped believing in. Can I think about it? I need to consider what's best for Lily. Of course, Claire said. Take a week, think it through. Talk to your daughter if you think she's old enough to have input. This is a big decision, and I want you to make it for the right reasons, not because you feel obligated because of last night. As Marcus stood to leave, Claire spoke again. Thank you, Marcus. For last night, yes, but also for reminding me that kindness still exists, that not everyone has an agenda, that sometimes people do good things simply because they're good people. He paused at the door, looking back at this woman who existed in a completely different world than his own, but who somehow in the space of one strange night had become someone he might actually trust. You would have done the same for me if our positions were reversed. Claire's smile was sad and honest. I'd like to think so, but I'm not sure I would have. I've been CEO for 3 years. And I've forgotten how to see people instead of positions. Thank you for being someone who still remembers. If you've ever met someone who saw through the lies when everyone else stayed silent, do you think that's fate bringing exactly who you needed? Share your thoughts below. Marcus spent 3 days thinking about Claire's offer, weighing practical benefits against his instinctive distrust of anything that seemed too good to be true. He talked to Lily in the careful way you talk to 6-year-olds about big decisions, asking what she thought about Daddy working different hours that might mean he could pick her up from school every day instead of Mrs. Park doing it. Lily's response was immediate and enthusiastic. Does that mean you won't be tired all the time? And we could have dinner together every night? And maybe go to the park on weekends? The simple desires of a child who just wanted more time with her father made the decision surprisingly easy. Marcus called Claire's direct line, the number she'd included in the job offer folder, and accepted the position before he could second-guess himself. His first day as head of corporate security felt surreal, arriving through the main entrance instead of the service entrance he'd used for 2 years, riding the elevator to the executive floor instead of taking the stairs to the basement security office. Having an actual office with his name on the door and a view of the city that reminded him how far he'd come from night shift rounds. Claire made a point of introducing him to the executive team personally, making clear through her words and body language that Marcus had her complete support and authority. Some of the executives looked skeptical about a former security guard being elevated to such a position, but Claire's cold stare made clear that their opinions were neither requested nor welcome. "Marcus saved my life," she said during the senior staff meeting where his appointment was announced. Not metaphorically, not in some abstract business sense. Literally saved me from a dangerous situation when everyone else walked away. If you have a problem with me rewarding that kind of integrity and courage, you're welcome to discuss it with HR before you clean out your desk. The message was received. Whatever skepticism existed stayed private. But the real surprise came 2 weeks into Marcus's new role, when Claire started appearing in his office for what she called security briefings, but what increasingly felt like something else entirely. Conversations that started with discussions about building access protocols would drift into talks about their lives, their challenges, their experiences of trying to navigate worlds that didn't quite fit who they were underneath their professional roles. "Do you ever feel like you're playing a part?" Claire asked one afternoon, sitting in the chair across from Marcus's desk instead of staying safely behind her own desk in her corner office. "Like the person everyone sees isn't really you, just a performance you've learned to give because it's what people expect?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "Every day, I'm supposed to be the tough former Marine, the security expert who doesn't feel things. But when Lily cries because she misses her mom, I feel like I'm failing at the one job that actually matters. The performance doesn't help with that." "I'm supposed to be the Ice Queen CEO," Claire admitted. "Ruthless, focused, always in control. But some nights I go home to my empty penthouse and wonder what I'm actually building. What the point is of all this power and wealth if I'm completely alone in it." The vulnerability in her voice made Marcus look up from the security reports he'd been reviewing. "You're not alone. You have colleagues, friends, people around you constantly." "I have employees and business relationships," Claire corrected gently. "People who are nice to me because I pay their salaries or because associating with me benefits their careers. That's not the same as having people who care about you as a person rather than a position." "Like the night of the party," Marcus said, understanding what she was really saying. "When everyone left because being associated with drunk Claire might hurt their social standing." "Exactly." Claire stood, moving to the window where late afternoon light turned the city golden. "Can I tell you something that will probably make me sound pathetic?" "Nothing you say could make you sound pathetic. That night when you helped me home, it was the first time in 3 years anyone had touched me with genuine kindness instead of professional courtesy. The way you fastened my seatbelt, like I was someone precious who needed protecting. The way you made sure I was safe inside my apartment before you left. Nobody's cared about my actual well-being like that since my father died." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, the same sensation he'd felt in her office when she'd offered him the job. This woman who had everything money could buy was admitting she lacked the one thing that actually mattered, human connection that wasn't transactional. "I care," Marcus said quietly. Not because you're my boss or because you gave me this opportunity. I care because I've seen who you are underneath the CEO performance. The woman who writes family-friendly policies into employment contracts because one conversation made her realize people struggle with things she'd never had to consider. The person who protects her employees even when they wouldn't do the same for her. Claire turned from the window, her expression vulnerable in ways Marcus had only seen that rainy night outside the bar. I want to meet her. Lily, I want to know the person who makes you believe good things are possible, who makes you work night shifts and survive on no sleep because she's worth every sacrifice. The request should have felt strange, too personal, crossing boundaries between professional and personal that Marcus had always maintained carefully. But something about Claire's expression made it feel natural instead, like the next logical step in whatever was developing between them. She'd like that, Marcus said. She's been asking why Daddy smiles at his phone now when your name appears. 6-year-olds are remarkably observant about things adults think they're hiding. Claire laughed, the sound genuine and unguarded. I smile at my phone too when you text. My assistant noticed and asked if I was dating someone. I didn't know how to explain that I'm not dating anyone. I'm just becoming friends with someone who sees me as a person instead of a position. Is that what we are? Marcus asked. Friends? I'd like to be, Claire said softly. If that's not too weird given our professional relationship. If you think it's possible to be friends with your boss. I think it's possible to be friends with Claire, Marcus replied. The boss part is just a job title. The friendship would be with the person underneath. So the following Saturday, Claire Bennett arrived at Marcus's modest apartment in jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than his rent, but looked deliberately chosen to be less intimidating. She carried a bag from an expensive toy store, looking nervous in ways CEOs probably weren't supposed to look. Lily answered the door with her usual enthusiasm, studying this stranger with the blunt curiosity of childhood. Are you Daddy's boss? The one who made him stop being tired all the time? That's me, Claire confirmed, kneeling to be at eye level with the little girl. And you must be Lily. Your dad talks about you constantly. He says you're the smartest 6-year-old in the entire city. He's biased because he's my dad, Lily said seriously. But I am pretty smart. Do you want to see my bug collection? I have 17 different species and I'm learning all their scientific names. For the next 3 hours, Claire sat on Marcus's living room floor, learning about beetles and butterflies while Lily explained with passionate detail the differences between various insect species. Marcus made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, watching as his daughter taught one of the city's most powerful executives about the fascinating world of entomology with the kind of patient enthusiasm she usually reserved for her closest friends. She's remarkable, Claire said later, after Lily had been convinced to take a nap with promises that Claire would still be there when she woke up. The way she thinks about problems, the curiosity she brings to everything. You're raising someone extraordinary. I'm just trying to raise someone kind, Marcus replied, the same answer he gave everyone who complimented his daughter. Someone who sees wonder in the world instead of just seeing what's useful or profitable. Someone who cares about things that don't directly benefit her. Like her father, Claire observed. She learned that from watching you. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the sounds of the neighborhood drifting through the open window. Children playing, families talking, the ordinary symphony of people living ordinary lives. Can I ask you something? Claire's voice was careful, like she was approaching territory that might be off limits. Do you ever think about dating again? About finding someone to share your life with instead of doing everything alone? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes, but it's complicated. Any woman I date would have to understand that Lily comes first, always. That there will be dance recitals and science fairs and bedtime routines that can't be rescheduled for adult plans. Most people aren't interested in signing up for that level of commitment with someone else's child. Some people might be, Claire said softly. Some people might see that commitment to your daughter as exactly what makes you worth knowing. Worth more than knowing, actually. Their eyes met, and Marcus saw something in Claire's expression that made his breath catch. This wasn't just friendship developing between them. This was something more complicated, more dangerous, more potentially wonderful than either of them had been willing to acknowledge. Claire, he began, uncertain what he wanted to say but needing to acknowledge what was happening. I know, she interrupted gently. I know this is complicated. You work for me. We exist in different worlds. There are power dynamics and professional boundaries and 1,000 reasons why this is a terrible idea. But, Marcus prompted. But I can't stop thinking about you, Claire admitted. About Lily. About the life you've built from tragedy and determination. About how you make me want to be better than I am. To care about things that actually matter instead of just quarterly profits and board meetings. And I think maybe you might feel something similar about me. Marcus reached for her hand, his fingers lacing through hers with a naturalness that felt both terrifying and inevitable. I do. Feel something similar. Something that scares me because it's the first time since Sarah that I've wanted to risk caring about someone who might leave, who might get hurt, who might decide that a single father with a 6-year-old and a small apartment isn't worth the complications. I'm not going anywhere, Claire said firmly, and your apartment is about 1,000 times more welcoming than my sterile penthouse. And Lily is remarkable, and you, Marcus Reed, are the first person in 3 years who has made me believe that maybe wealth and power aren't the most important things to build. From the bedroom, they heard Lily stirring, her sleepy voice calling for her daddy. Marcus squeezed Claire's hand once before standing, but the promise in that touch lingered like a question neither of them was quite ready to answer, but both wanted to explore. If you believe that sometimes trust grows in the spaces between what we show the world and who we really are, subscribe to Solo Parent Stories for more stories that remind us what actually matters. The crisis came 5 weeks into whatever was developing between Marcus and Claire. Their relationship existing in the undefined space between professional colleagues and something much more personal. They were careful at work, maintaining appropriate boundaries that fooled exactly no one, especially not Claire's assistant Jennifer, who had started smiling knowingly whenever Marcus appeared for their increasingly frequent security briefings. But outside the office, they had fallen into a routine that felt remarkably like family. Claire joined them for weekend breakfasts, helped Lily with homework that was far too easy for someone with Claire's MIT education, but which she approached with complete seriousness, attended a school play where Lily had 3 whole lines and beamed like she was watching Broadway's finest performance. Then Marcus's phone rang at 2 in the morning with the kind of call that every parent fears. Mrs. Park's voice tight with controlled panic. Marcus, Lily's in the emergency room. She woke up with severe abdominal pain. They're saying it might be appendicitis. I'm with her now, but you need to come immediately. Marcus was in his car within minutes, his mind blank with fear that felt too familiar, too much like the night the hospital had called about Sarah's accident. He was halfway to the hospital when muscle memory made him dial Claire's number, not thinking about whether it was appropriate to call his boss at 2 a.m., just needing to hear a voice that would tell him Lily would be okay. Marcus, Claire answered immediately, alert despite the hour. What's wrong? Lily's in the emergency room. Possible appendicitis. I'm on my way there now. I needed to hear someone say she'll be okay. She will be okay, Claire said firmly. Which hospital? I'm coming there right now. You don't have to do that. It's the middle of the night. You have meetings tomorrow. You don't need to. Marcus, Claire interrupted, her voice brooking no argument. I'm coming. Text me the hospital address. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She arrived in 15, still wearing sweatpants and an old college t-shirt, her hair in a messy bun, and face completely free of the makeup she wore to maintain her CEO image. She found Marcus in the waiting room, pacing like a caged animal, and simply wrapped her arms around him without saying anything. They're running tests, Marcus said into her shoulder, his voice muffled. They think it's appendicitis, but they need to confirm before surgery. She's scared, Claire. She keeps asking for her mom, and I can't give her that. I can't give her the one thing she really needs. You can give her you, Claire said firmly, pulling back to look at him. You can give her a father who loves her more than anything, who dropped everything to be here, who will stay by her side through whatever comes next. That's not nothing, Marcus. That's everything. The surgeon appeared 2 hours later, confirming appendicitis and recommending immediate surgery to prevent rupture. Marcus signed consent forms with shaking hands, his mind filled with every possible worst-case scenario despite the surgeon's reassurances that this was routine, that children recovered quickly, that Lily would be fine. "Can I see her before surgery?" Marcus asked, his voice rough. "Of course. 5 minutes. And one other person if you'd like." Marcus looked at Claire, saw understanding in her eyes before he even asked. They walked together to the pre-op area where Lily lay on a gurney, looking impossibly small in the hospital gown, her eyes wide with fear that she was trying to be brave about. "Daddy!" She reached for Marcus, tears finally spilling over. "I'm scared. What if something bad happens like it happened to Mommy?" Marcus gathered her carefully, mindful of her pain. "Nothing bad is going to happen, sunshine. The doctors are going to fix you up, and when you wake up, I'll be right there, I promise." "Will Miss Claire be there too?" Lily asked, looking past Marcus to where Claire stood, her own eyes suspiciously bright. "If you want me to be," Claire said, moving closer to take Lily's small hand. "I'd very much like to be there when you wake up, if that's okay with you." "Please stay," Lily whispered. "Daddy needs you here too. He gets scared and lonely, but he doesn't say it because he thinks he has to be brave for me." The simple wisdom of a 6-year-old who understood more than adults gave her credit for made both Marcus and Claire's eyes fill with tears they tried to hide. The surgery took 90 minutes that felt like eternities. Marcus paced the waiting room while Claire sat calmly, her presence anchoring him in ways he didn't fully understand but desperately needed. When the surgeon finally appeared with news that everything had gone perfectly, that Lily was in recovery and would be moved to a room shortly, Marcus actually felt his knees buckle with relief. Claire caught him, strong despite her slender frame, holding him steady while he processed the fear that had been consuming him for hours. "She's okay," Claire whispered. "Your daughter is okay, Marcus." They sat together in Lily's hospital room while she slept off the anesthesia, Marcus holding his daughter's hand while Claire held his. Sometime around dawn, exhaustion finally caught up with Marcus and he dozed off in the uncomfortable hospital chair, his head tilted at an angle that would leave his neck sore for days. When he woke 2 hours later, he found Claire had covered him with her jacket and was reading quietly so as not to disturb either of them. The morning light through the hospital window illuminated her face, and Marcus realized with startling clarity that he'd fallen completely in love with this woman who had shown up at 2 a.m. in sweatpants, who held his hand through his worst fears, who loved his daughter without reservation or hesitation. "Thank you," he said quietly, not wanting to wake Lily, "for being here, for everything." Claire looked up from her book, her smile soft and genuine. "There's nowhere else I would rather be." And in that moment, in a sterile hospital room with his daughter recovering from surgery and the city waking up outside, Marcus understood that sometimes life gave you second chances when you'd stop believing in them. Sometimes love came from unexpected places, from drunk nights and security briefings and 6-year-olds who saw truth that adults tried to hide. Sometimes you just had to be brave enough to accept it. 4 months after Lily's surgery, Marcus stood in Claire's penthouse apartment, helping her pack boxes, while Lily directed the movers with the kind of authoritative enthusiasm that suggested she'd grow up to be either a CEO or a general. "That box goes in my new room, the one with the window seat that Daddy built. Be careful, it has my bug collection." Done. Claire had made the decision 3 weeks earlier, announcing it during dinner at Marcus's apartment, with the kind of nervous energy that suggested she'd been planning this speech for days. "I want to move in. Not to your apartment, before you panic about space. I want us all to move somewhere together, somewhere that's ours, not mine or yours, but actually ours, a home we choose together." Mamie, they'd found a house in a neighborhood that balanced good schools with reasonable prices, a place with a yard where Lily could hunt for bugs, and a porch where adults could sit on summer evenings. Nothing fancy, nothing that screamed wealth, just a home that felt right for 3 people learning to be a family. Bennett Industries board had raised eyebrows when Claire announced she was moving in with her head of security, but her cold stare and reminder that her personal life was none of their concern had ended that conversation quickly. Some things mattered more than appearances or professional boundaries, and Claire had stopped pretending otherwise. "You know people are going to talk," Marcus had said when she first suggested moving in together, "about the CEO dating an employee, about the power dynamics, about whether this is appropriate. Let them talk, Claire had replied firmly. I spent 3 years caring what people thought, building walls to protect myself from judgment and criticism. It left me empty and alone. I'm done with that. I'm choosing you, choosing Lily, choosing a life that actually matters over a reputation that only exists to make other people comfortable. Now, watching her label boxes with Lily's help, seeing her laugh when his daughter made jokes about needing a special box for her very important rocks, Marcus felt the last of his resistance to happiness finally crumble. He'd spent 3 years believing that loving again meant betraying Sarah's memory, that opening his heart meant risking the kind of loss he might not survive a second time. But Lily had said something wise last week that had changed his perspective. They'd been looking at photos of Sarah, something they did regularly to keep her memory alive, when his daughter had asked, "Do you think Mommy would like Miss Claire?" "I think she would," Marcus had answered honestly. "Me too," Lily had said, nodding seriously. "Because Mommy wanted us to be happy. She told me that before she went to heaven. She said Daddy might be sad for a while, but someday he'd smile again, and that would be good because love doesn't run out. You can love Mommy and love Miss Claire both." Out of the mouths of 6-year-olds came wisdom that adults complicated unnecessarily. That evening, after boxes were loaded and Lily had fallen asleep, exhausted from directing movers, Marcus and Claire stood on her penthouse balcony one last time, looking at the city that had witnessed the beginning of their unexpected love story. "Any regrets?" Marcus asked, his arm around her waist, pulling her close against the evening chill. "Not even one," Claire replied, leaning into him. "I'm trading this sterile penthouse with its $1 million view for a house with a yard and neighbors who actually talk to each other. I'm trading business dinners and networking events for family dinners and school plays. I'm trading loneliness disguised as success for actual happiness. That's not a trade, Marcus. That's winning the lottery." "I love you," Marcus said, the words coming easily now, natural as breathing. "I love that you showed up at 2 a.m. in sweatpants because Lily needed us. I love that you learned the scientific names of 17 beetle species because it mattered to a 6-year-old. I love that you chose us over everything else you could have chosen." Claire turned in his arms, her hands framing his face. "I love you too, both of you. You saved me that rainy night outside the bar, but not in the way I thought at the time. You didn't save me from danger or embarrassment. You saved me from the loneliness of having everything except what actually mattered." They kissed as the city lights sparkled below them, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances, who had built something real from a drunk night and a simple act of kindness. Inside the penthouse, Lily stirred in her sleeping bag, murmuring about butterflies and new bedrooms. Tomorrow they would wake up in their new house, their new life, their new family. Tomorrow they would start building memories in spaces that belonged to all of them equally. But tonight, on this balcony where endings and beginnings blurred together, Marcus held the woman who had transformed his life by simply showing up when it mattered. And Claire held the man who had reminded her that power and wealth meant nothing without someone to share them with. The message that had shocked Marcus 4 months ago had been simple. "I need to see you." But what it had really meant was, "I need you. Your kindness, your integrity, your love. I need the life you've shown me is possible." And Marcus, the single father who had only been trying to do the right thing on a rainy night, had given her exactly that. Sometimes destiny arrived disguised as duty, sometimes love grew from simple decency, and sometimes the best things in life began with nothing more than stopping when everyone else kept walking, helping when everyone else turned away, caring when everyone else proved they didn't. That night outside the bar, Marcus had saved Claire from immediate danger. But in the months that followed, they had saved each other from something far worse, living half lives where success and survival replaced genuine connection and authentic love. Now they had both, success and love, survival and thriving, professional respect and personal happiness. They had everything that actually mattered. If you believe that sometimes destiny begins with someone brave enough to stop and help when everyone else walks away, subscribe to Solo Parent Stories for more stories that remind us what really matters.